Hey, this is Bob Brooks, host of the Prudent Money radio show. Today, we wanted to do a part two to yesterday's program about all the changes going on with financial aid. And this is coming up for this next year, this next school year, 24 and 25. And all this will be available, not the FAFSA form anymore, but this new form in December. John Hupalo, our college expert, came on the program to kind of wrap that up and talk a little bit about what you need to know. The funny thing about, I'll let you know a little on the behind the scenes, is that, and I did not know this. John and I have been doing programs for 5 or 6 years now, and I didn't know he was head of the volunteer fire department in New York. And he got a call right before the program, and so he didn't call in. Now this is a guy that is very punctual, always can count on, never late, and so I never worry about not having any material. And it wasn't about till about 10 after 3 that he actually was able to call from the site that he'd gotten the fire out and talk talk a little bit about what we were going to discuss. And I had nothing, so it was all going to be improv, which I'm sure that you're glad it wasn't. But we talked about a lot of information, so go check that out. His site is www.mycollegecorner.com. If you want some more information about myself and what we do here at Prudent Money as far as working with clients, go to prudentmoney.com. Would love to talk with you. Would love to talk to you about working with you. And all the information you need is the website, or you can send us an email at info@prudentmoney.com. Keep the faith.
It's management or staff.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
Well, student loans are restarting. What are the latest options for student loan borrowers? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money radio show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. We're going to have John Hupalo on the program today, and we'll be talking to him kind of a part two of what's going to be what's happening with student loans. As we talked yesterday, we discussed the fact that student loans, that they're changing the financial aid formula for that, and they're always making changes, right? So we'll be talking about that, trying to get you up the curve, because for those of you who will have a student in college or have a senior in high school, you're looking at filling out a FAFSA form. By starting, usually they start that process in October, which is just a month away. So this new form you're going to have to fill out, they'll start, but they're not starting until December. And one of the things we talked about on the program yesterday was that what are the chances of them not getting this taken care of? That would be getting taken care of on time. So we'll see what happens with that, and we'll keep you posted. One thing for sure, we will have access to John, which is good. We'll have access to him with everything going on, and especially their website, mycollegecorner.com. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. I'm waiting on John to call in, and we'll talk a little bit about what's happening. You know, one of the things that was a little bit disturbing as I was preparing yesterday for the program with interview with John, was that a survey that came out and said that 62% of student borrowers would boycott payments if their student loan payments, the 1-year ramp up, all that was over with. Now, what I mean by that is that President Biden, the Department of Education, basically gave student loan borrowers an additional year. I mean, that's what it comes down to, is because it doesn't, yes, it goes back into effect this month. And yes, though student loan borrowers own they're going to owe their first payment after 3.5 year roughly hiatus. They'll have that payment due October 1st. Well, the way that they have it set up, they're giving them a whole year to avoid any late payments on your credit report or any bad marks at all. So nothing will happen to you if you don't. From what I understand, please make sure that you look into the rules about this if you're thinking about just not paying. Supposedly, it's not supposed to hurt your credit score or have any negative effects on you. Can you just see someone who 62% of those who said would boycott payments didn't make the payment, didn't really see any adverse effects of it, and just kind of went under the notion that, well, I guess it's okay, that nothing's going to happen. I mean, I can't even imagine what would happen a year from now when they're still not paying it, and then they start getting late notices that they're going to probably ignore. And then you start to see the default notices come on, and then they end up defaulting on their student loan debt. That is not a good situation at all. So just one thing we want to keep our eyes on. I mean, we talked about throughout the time period of this 3 hours. 3 hours. I'm a little bit distracted, so I'm waiting on a phone call, so I'm trying to do that. We kind of got this put together last minute, so I hope it does work out. But okay, well, let me think here. Okay, we're still working on it. I was reading a message. But we're talking about this throughout the 3.5 years that led up to this starting up of repayments, is that the longer students and former students wait to make this payment, and keep in mind that we've gone through and still going through an entire inflation cycle. And it's one of those things where people are being squeezed. Of course, everything costs more money. So it's one of those things that either there could be a percentage that didn't stop making the payment. That would be ideal, because you're paying down that debt without the interest build up on it. But in the event that you're not making that payment, then you could have started spending that money, doing something else with it. And the whole point is that you develop this habit of not making the payment, and this is where you really have a problem coming in. So, and then there's the people who maybe have gotten into a situation where groceries up 25%. Other expenses are up. You just don't really have any room to make that payment, and so then you have the situation that you've got, and that's not a good situation either. So we'll see what happens. I mean, we've referred to it as a crisis, because it could very well become one, and you can see how. Hey, this is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. I am waiting on John Hupalo to call, and in the meantime, if you have a question, I would really welcome your questions. 1-877-913-5357 is the number to call, and I do have a line open. Well, let me send here a message in. There we go. Send a message in to Chris. Always appreciate Chris taking care of things, and always does such a great job with that. So, 62% said they'd boycott payments. Here are some of the other survey findings. Half of student loan borrowers believe a repayment boycott could lead to total debt forgiveness. So there is a good percentage of people who have not really been keeping up with it, and I get that because it's one of those things where the news continues to change, and it's hard to know what's true, what's not true, what's believable, that sort of thing. Of those who plan to restart payments in October, 72% have or will take an extra work in order to make the payments. Well, that's not good. 48% are doubtful they'll be able to afford their loan payments. That's about half. 3 in 4 borrowers who are likely to vote say a candidate's student loan beliefs influence their vote. If a good percentage of borrowers were to get together, could they help to potentially swing an election? Because that is what this one survey result is, that likely to influence their beliefs, their votes. We'll see what happens. John Hupalo, are you there?
I am, Bob. How are you this afternoon?
I'm certainly glad you called.
Well, I'm a volunteer fire chief at our department, and we got a call with an active structure fire where I'm sitting right now, but I'm glad that we can connect, and I apologize for the delay.
This couldn't get any more interesting. So you're on the volunteer fire department.
That's right, and I'm actually the chief of the volunteer fire department. So at about 3:10, a call came in that there was a big fire in a commercial building and right next door to where we are. And we've been down here, but the fire's out. Everybody's safe, so we can talk about the fires at the Department of Education if you'd like.
Yeah, so if you have to abruptly go, I do understand. Okay, so I was talking a little bit about the survey that you can say, oh, that's a survey of a small group of people, but I think that it's in some way it represents the way people think. You talked about this yesterday, and I wanted you to go through it just one more time, and that is the consequences if you were to go into default with a student loan. And please, ladies and gentlemen, listen to these consequences. If you are in that pool of people that are student loan borrowers, you're saying, I'm going to boycott this, or thinking about boycotting it, or maybe just not paying, whatever the situation might be, listen to these consequences.
Yeah, Bob, the government made the rules, which means they get to tell you how they're going to play with you. And when they want their money back, they're going to go to pretty good extremes to get it. For instance, without any court order, administratively, the Department of Education can take 15% of any taxpayer's wages if they owe a default on a student loan, right off the top. Then they can sue you. And if they sue you and win, saying you have not been a payer, they can up that percentage by whatever the court says. The government also has the ability to take your lottery winnings. The government can also clamp down if you have a professional license. If you're a doctor or any of those professions, they can put a clamp on whether or not you can renew your license. There's all kinds of really mean, nasty stuff that the Department of Education can do. So this idea that, we're going to have this great little strike. Hey, Bob, hold on a second. Hey, guys, what those guys take the truck down the floor? I'm doing a show right now. Sorry about that, Bob.
No problem.
There's a lot of really difficult consequences that you cannot escape. So, this nonsense that, I'm going to show the Department of Education. Bob, we're financial people. We know about leverage in financial transactions, right?
Right.
And the reality is the Department of Education has all the leverage. So I'm going to go to the department and say, I'm not going to pay you. And they're going to say, okay, don't pay us. And we'll send you into this really nasty process. The last thing, which is really important, and every one of your listeners, I hope, will realize what's going to happen. They also will start charging you 20% collection costs. So that means every time you make a $100 payment, only $80 of that is actually going to go to pay down your outstanding debt. So you're going to be sinking for a long time if you want to try and play this game. So, it's a really bad idea. It's maybe a dumb idea, maybe a stupid idea. If somebody wants to join one of these protests, I would not recommend it at all, ever.
I've seen the statistic before, but I can't remember exactly what the number was. About how many student loan borrowers are there right now?
There are about 45 million student loan borrowers right now.
Yeah, that's pretty significant. And I think I know the answer to this, but if a good percentage of borrowers were to get together, could they help to swing at all an election?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think the reality is no.
Probably
and
not.
The reason for that, and here's why. Back in the days of 2011 when we had the Occupy Wall Street, there was all this energy around bad student loan companies, and they tried to get together then, tried a similar strike, and nobody really paid attention. It's what it's like. You're on strike. Well, maybe the first couple of days there's a lot of energy and there's maybe some fun to it. You're done doing something counterculture. Well, after a couple of weeks and a couple of months and the bill collectors start calling you, it's no longer a lot of fun. So I don't see this happening.
Okay, so where we got to yesterday was at the very end of the program. We are where we were then, and you started to talk about a great, at least a little bit of relief, and then we got ushered off the air. So this is where I wanted to start over with this new student loan repayment plan that could cut payments for 20 million people. And I love these the way they structure this. Let's call it Saving on a Valuable Education, or SAVE.
SAVE, right? Yeah.
Can you just see? Can you see this all these bureaucrats sitting around a table, just throwing out ideas?
Well, I'll be honest with you, Bob. I hope it's a bunch of bureaucrats sitting around a table rather than some high-paid marketing firm telling them that this is what they ought to do, which might be equally possible.
No doubt.
The SAVE program, this is like the kind of the last straw in this whole student loan forgiveness thing that started around the 2014-15 time period. So, Biden failed in his effort to relieve all the student loan debt. The Supreme Court basically said, sorry, this is really not something that the government has the power to do, or more appropriately, the Secretary of Education doesn't have, or the President doesn't have, with the stroke of a pen, the ability to wipe away all this debt. So the President cleverly said, well, I've got something in my back pocket. And it's really aimed to try to get as close to zero payment for as many borrowers as possible. One of the numbers I saw was something like 23 million borrowers may not have to make any more payments, as long as, and this is the key, there is a formula and a table that says, you have to make less than 250% of the poverty level in order to have a no payment on your loan. And there's a chart, again, if you go up on the Department of Education's site, studentaid.org, they have a good table there. If you put in the poverty level, it will show you what that scale is. So for family of two, for whatever number in your family, they tell you what the poverty level is. You multiply that by 2.5, and then you know who's going to make a zero payment on a loan. So they've got that going. And then they say for everyone, if you have a student loan outstanding, you're only going to be required to make a payment of about you're only going to have to make a payment of 5% of your disposable income. And of course, there's a lot of devil in the detail how you calculate all that. But at the end of the day, they've lowered it from 10% to 5%, and they've increased the poverty level definition from about 100 and I think it's 25% to like 250%. So they really expanded the coverage for who will be eligible for these repayment programs.
So do you sign up for it, or do they automatically put you in this program? I mean, what's the details on that?
Yeah, you're supposed to be auto-enrolled, but I would check with the student loan servicer. We've talked about this before. The first stop every time a student loan borrower has a question, they should call their student loan servicer and ask what they qualify for, on whether or not they're enrolled in these different programs.
So this is a situation that affects why. I guess where I'm kind of missing something is why it only applies to 23 million. So it didn't apply to everybody. No, but not everybody can take
Well,
advantage of this, right? Or it's not, am I wrong?
no, everybody is eligible, but what they're saying is those who will be eligible for zero payment, probably in the 20 or 23 million range. But everybody else will qualify for that 5% threshold.
Don't you think that that's a high number, 23 million?
Well, that was their purpose, Bob. They're the government. They can make the rules. So they wanted to make this as widespread as possible after the failure of the forgiveness through the court system.
Well, of course, in a situation like this, John, you have all kinds of people trying to commit fraud and trying to pull off scams. And the problem with this is if you owe student loan debt, number one, you're glad someone's calling you to tell you that there's a program that you can get some relief. So you're hoping it all works out. But I think the downside is you don't know what's real and what's not real anymore.
That's right, and that's why my first advice is always call the student loan servicer. They're the information keeper. They have your records. They'll tell you what you're eligible for, and they'll try and get you in a program. My point in all this, Bob, is it doesn't matter what you and I think about these programs from any perspective, right? We think it's fair, it's unfair, it's political, whatever it is. These are the rules, and so if a borrower qualifies under the rules, I think they're I'm going to say entitled only because that's probably the right way to say it. Not judgmental, but they're entitled to participate in this program. So call the student loan servicer and say, this is my situation. You have my records. What am I eligible for? And, quite honestly, take advantage of it because that's why the program was designed.
So back to the adjustment, and we talked about this yesterday, the adjustment of financial aid. And we covered that pretty thoroughly, as thorough as you can cover with the details that you know. What is the end game with that?
Bob, I'm so grateful to have a chance to talk to you today, not only because this fire is out, but also because there was one other thing that I thought about last night, and that's this. I did not make probably what is the most important point, and that is this. The government's financial aid form, the free application for federal student aid, is going to be available sometime in December. And then once the student, now this is the key, the student has to fill this out. They need some parent information, but the student has to do this. And we wrote about this in that article on mycollegecorner.com. But the student applies. So here's the key. Tomorrow, this afternoon, tonight, your listeners can go to mycollegecorner.com, SAI, the tools, the SIA calculator, and they can get an idea in advance, right now, before their student even files, what the general estimate of the financial aid eligibility they may be eligible for. It's really critical that they try to do that as soon as possible, particularly the seniors in high school, where they're going to make some decisions at about the exact moment that the financial aid package may or may not arrive. So we're going to give them an opportunity to do that calculation in advance and maybe, save them some heartache about, how much do I think I might be eligible for.
We talked about this yesterday about the possibility of a delay in getting these things out. And it is amazing to me how the government can end up delaying these types of signups and programs and still somehow pull it all off.
Well, it's where we started yesterday, right? They couldn't have designed a bigger mess if they tried to. They have 45 million student loan borrowers who are going to be up in the air. They have every junior, sophomore, freshman, and senior college, and then all the seniors in high school and all those parents up in the air, and there are no real decisions. So we really need some help, and that's why, like what we're doing at My College Corner and some others, some of the national associations, they're really trying to find ways to help parents grapple with this as best we can. So that article that we wrote, and I'm not trying to hawk the article other than there are
it's a great article.
Steps that they could do today, right? You posted it. Go get your student ID. There are all these things that you can do today to prepare for when this change occurs, and it's going to be sometime in December.
It's a tough formula and information to digest to begin with. Now they're changing it all, but I'm so thankful that we've got you to as a resource. John, always here once a month. This month I said, hey, John, you got to come back tomorrow, and we got to finish this up because there's a lot of great information. So I learned something new about you. You're on the volunteer fire department. You're the chief of the volunteer fire department.
The chief of the fire department. That's right, Bob.
I can tell you confidently, I've never had that happen to me on the radio where a guest had to rush off to take care of a fire. So I thought the most dependable guest that I have ever is John Hupalo. And so there's something going on, and you were putting a fire out. So certainly glad that.
So, Bob, I'm glad that we could get together. I really wish your listeners well. And also, there's an Ask Us on mycollegecorner.com. Somebody has a question, send it in. We'll try as best we can to answer it.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome, Bob.
This is Bob Brooks. You got a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
The word